The cage door slammed shut behind Riker Vale with a finality that echoed through the vast arena. Above him, tens of thousands of alien spectators filled the tiered seats, their voices creating a wall of sound that hit like a physical force. Below him, the fighting pit stretched 30 meters across, smooth black stone stained with fluids he didn't want to identify. And across from him, something with too many limbs and murder in its eyes was already circling. Human. The announcer's voice boomed through translation devices embedded in the arena walls. You face Grakthar the Bone Splitter, 12 victories, 0 defeats. Will you provide sport, or simply die quickly? Riker rolled his shoulders, testing the limited range of motion the energy shackles around his wrists allowed. They'd taken everything when they'd captured his transport ship, weapons, armor, even his boots. All he had left were the torn remains of his flight suit and his fists. The shackles pulsed once, then deactivated. The fight had begun. Grakthar charged immediately, 4 arms spread wide to grab him. The alien stood 8 feet tall, covered in ridged armor plating that looked natural rather than worn. Riker had maybe 3 seconds to form a strategy. He didn't waste them standing still. Riker dropped low and lunged forward, driving his shoulder into Grakthar's leading knee joint. The alien's biology was different, but physics was universal. Joints bent in predictable ways, and momentum was momentum. Grakthar stumbled, and Riker was already moving, hammering his fist into the softer tissue he'd spotted at the creature's throat. Grakthar roared and backhanded him across the arena. Riker hit the wall hard enough to see stars, tasted blood in his mouth. The crowd's roar intensified. "Get up, human!" the announcer crowed. Grakthar hasn't even begun to... Riker was already up, and Grakthar was charging again. This time Riker was ready. He sidestepped at the last second, caught one of Grakthar's arms, and used the alien's own momentum to redirect him face first into the arena wall. Before Grakthar could recover, Riker was on his back, arm locked around that thick throat, squeezing. Grakthar thrashed, trying to reach back with those 4 arms, but Riker had positioned himself in the one blind spot where those limbs couldn't effectively grab. He held on through the bucking, through the desperate attempts to dislodge him, through the gradually weakening struggles. When Grakthar finally went limp, Riker released him and stepped back, breathing hard. The crowd's roar had changed. It wasn't bloodlust anymore, it was something else. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of interest. Victory. The announcer bellowed. The human survives, but can he survive? The next challenge? Riker looked up at the viewing boxes that ringed the arena's upper tier. Most were filled with wealthy-looking aliens in elaborate clothing, cheering or cursing depending on their bets. But one box was different, larger, positioned at the arena's north point, draped in deep crimson fabric that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He couldn't see who sat inside, but he felt the weight of their attention like a physical pressure against his skin. The cage door opened again, 2 opponents this time. 4 fights later, Riker could barely stand. His left eye was swollen shut. His ribs screamed with every breath, at least 2 cracked, maybe 3. His knuckles were raw and bleeding from hitting chitin scales and armor plating that his fists weren't designed to damage. But he was still standing, and his opponents weren't. The arena had gone quieter now. The bloodthirsty cheering had been replaced by something stranger, a murmuring anticipation like the crowd was waiting for something to happen that had never happened before. Unprecedented. The announcer's voice had lost its mocking tone. 6 victories, 6. The human has defeated Grakthar the Bone Splitter, the twin ravagers of Kelthais, Morzak the Hammer, and the serrated sisters. The betting houses are in chaos. The arena record books must be rewritten. Riker swayed on his feet, trying to focus through the pain and exhaustion. His training had covered hostile environments, survival situations, even unarmed combat against multiple opponents. But nothing prepared you for this, for fighting until your body gave out, then fighting past that point because the alternative was death. The cage door opened one final time. What stepped through made Riker's blood run cold despite the arena's heat. It was vaguely humanoid, but 12 feet tall and covered in what looked like living metal. Its arms ended in blade like appendages that could slice through steel. Its eyes glowed with cold intelligence. "The final challenge," the announcer roared. "Vexirn, champion of 1,000 arenas, undefeated across 3-star systems, human. You have exceeded all expectations. But here is where your story ends." Vexirn moved with liquid grace, those blade arms whistling through the air in a pattern that would have been beautiful if it wasn't designed to kill. Riker barely got his arms up in time to deflect the first strike, felt the edge slice through the remains of his sleeve and draw a line of fire across his forearm. He couldn't match this thing's reach, couldn't match its speed, couldn't survive a prolonged fight, so he wouldn't fight prolonged. Riker let the next strike come, twisted just enough that it missed his vitals, and stepped inside Vexirn's guard. The champion was fast, but that massive frame needed space to operate effectively. Up close, those blade arms were actually a disadvantage. Riker drove his fist into what looked like a sensory cluster on Vexirn's torso. The champion reeled back, and Riker followed, raining blows on joints, on the gaps between armor plates, on anything that looked vulnerable. His knuckles split further. His damaged ribs ground together with every movement. But Vexirn was staggering now, those blade arms flailing without the precision from before. Riker saw his opening, a junction where the metal plating met at Vexirn's throat. He gathered everything he had left, planted his feet, and drove his fist forward with every ounce of strength and desperation his battered body could produce. Something crunched. Vexirn's eyes flickered and went dark. The massive champion toppled backward and crashed to the arena floor. Riker stood over the fallen body, swaying, barely conscious. Blood dripped from his torn knuckles onto the black stone. The arena had gone completely silent. Then, from the crimson-draped viewing box, a single voice cut through the stillness. It was feminine, commanding, and carried absolute authority that needed no translation. "Bring him to me." They didn't drag him gently. The 4 guards in ornate armor hauled Riker through corridors of polished obsidian, up stairs that seemed to go on forever, past chambers filled with treasures he was too exhausted to properly register. His feet barely touched the ground. He was going to die now. That much was clear. You didn't survive 7 arena fights and then get brought before whoever ran this nightmare just to receive a medal. The throne room doors opened into a space so vast it had its own weather system. Riker could see clouds forming near the ceiling. The floor was mirror-polished stone that reflected everything, creating a disorienting sense of infinite space. And at the far end, on a throne that looked carved from a single massive ruby, sat the Empress. She was Nalkorian. Riker recognized the species from intelligence briefings. though he'd never seen one in person. Tall and elegant, with skin that shifted between deep crimson and burnt orange depending on the light. Her face was angular and sharp, with high cheekbones and eyes that glowed like molten gold. She wore armor that looked ceremonial but functional, worked with patterns that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. But what struck Riker most was the weight of her presence. This wasn't just royalty. This was a predator wearing a crown. The guards forced him to his knees 20 feet from the throne. Every muscle in his body protested. He tasted blood with every breath. "Leave us," the Empress said. The guards hesitated. "Your Radiance, he is dangerous. He can barely stand." Her golden eyes never left Riker's face. "If I cannot defend myself against one half-dead human, then I deserve whatever fate awaits me. Leave us." The guards retreated, the massive doors closing behind them with a boom that echoed through the chamber. The silence stretched between them. The Empress studied Riker like he was a puzzle she was deciding whether to solve or discard. "You fight well," she finally said. Her English was perfect, barely accented. "For a human, for anyone, truthfully, 7 victories in a single day, 6 of them against opponents who should have killed you in the first 30 seconds. Riker coughed, tasted more blood. "Sorry to disappoint. I'm sure you bet against me." The Empress's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "I don't bet, I invest, and I have been watching this arena for 3 cycles, waiting for someone worth investing in. Do you know how many fighters I've watched die in that pit? Hundreds? Thousands?" She rose from her throne and descended the steps with fluid grace. "The arena serves multiple purposes in my empire. Entertainment for the masses, yes, but also recruitment, testing, proving grounds. I watch every fight, seeking individuals who possess qualities that cannot be taught or bred. Adaptability, will, the refusal to surrender even when logic says defeat is inevitable." She stopped 5 feet from him, close enough that he could see the patterns on her armor weren't decorative. They were scars, carefully preserved and incorporated into the metal. "You are not the strongest fighter who has entered that arena, not the fastest, not the most skilled." Her golden eyes burned into his. "But you are the most determined. You analyze, you adapt, you win because you refuse the possibility of defeat. These are qualities I value above all others." "Why?" Riker forced the word through split lips. "Because I am surrounded by traitors." The Empress's voice dropped, and for the first time Riker heard something beyond command in it, exhaustion, perhaps, or fury carefully controlled. "My empire spans 17 star systems. I command fleets that could reduce planets to ash. I have wealth beyond calculation and power beyond measure. And yet," she gestured at the empty throne room, "I cannot trust my own generals, my own advisors. They smile and bow while planning my assassination. They swear loyalty while selling information to my enemies. Strength means nothing when you're surrounded by those who wait for weakness." She circled him slowly, and Riker fought the instinct to track her movement. Showing his back felt dangerous, but trying to follow her while this injured would make him look weak. "I need a champion," the Empress continued. "Not another general who can be bribed, not another warrior whose loyalty flows to the highest bidder. I need someone who owes me everything. Someone from outside my political structure, immune to the corruption that has infected my court. Someone with nothing to gain from my death and everything to lose." She stopped in front of him again. "I need you, Riker Vale." He blinked, surprised she knew his name. "You're offering me a job?" I'm offering you survival, honor, purpose, a place in my empire where your skills will be valued, your victories celebrated, your loyalty rewarded. She held out one hand, palm up. Become my champion, stand at my right hand, fight when I require you to fight, serve as living proof that strength and will can overcome any obstacle. And in return, I will give you everything, wealth, status, protection under my personal seal. And if I refuse, the Empress's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then you become a problem, a human who defeated 7 of my finest warriors in a single day, who witnessed the inner workings of my arena, who has seen my face and heard my voice. I cannot allow such a problem to exist outside my control. So I'd be hunted by every assassin, bounty hunter, and military unit in my empire. I would make examples of anyone who sheltered you. Your face would be broadcast across 17 star systems with a bounty that would tempt saints to murder. Her golden eyes held no mercy. You would have days, perhaps, a week if you were very lucky and very skilled, but you would die Riker Vale, alone on some forgotten world, knowing that you chose pride over pragmatism. Riker looked down at his ruined hands. He thought about his ship destroyed, his crew scattered or dead, his home weeks of faster-than-light travel away even if he had a ship. He had nothing left but his life and the skills that had kept him alive this long. The Empress watched him with inhuman patience, waiting for his decision. "What does being your champion actually mean?" he asked. "Day to day? You train, you maintain combat readiness, you stand in the throne room during important ceremonies, visible proof of my power. When challenges arise, and they will, you fight in my name. When traitors reveal themselves, you help root them out. When I require demonstration of strength, you provide it." She paused. "And you live, Riker Vale, you live with honor and purpose instead of bleeding out in the dark. I'd be a symbol. You'd be a weapon, my weapon, but unlike the others in my armory, you'd be honored for it." Riker raised his head to meet her burning gaze. "I want medical treatment, real quarters, not a cell. And I want to know who I'm fighting for, not just titles, but who you actually are." The Empress smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Agreed. I am Empress Zarethia Lon Piraxis, fourth of her line, keeper of the Crimson Throne, commander of the Stellar Armada. I conquered 6 of my 17 systems personally. I killed the 3 generals who tried to overthrow me during my coronation. I have ruled for 20 cycles and intend to rule for 20 more." She extended her hand again. "And I keep my promises to those who serve me faithfully." Riker looked at that offered hand, alien, elegant, belonging to someone who could have him killed with a word. Then he looked at the alternative, running until he couldn't run anymore, dying alone and forgotten. He'd never been good at running anyway. He reached up and clasped her hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong, and her skin was warmer than he expected. "I serve," he said. "Then rise, champion." Zarethia pulled him to his feet with effortless strength. "You will be healed, trained, equipped, and presented to my court. They will hate you, fear you, plot against you, but they will not touch you because you belong to me now." She released his hand and turned toward the throne. "Guards, summon the medical staff. My champion requires attention, and prepare the chamber of binding. We have an oath ceremony to conduct." As the doors opened and servants rushed in, Riker swayed slightly on his feet. Everything hurt. His future was uncertain at best, suicidal at worst. But he was alive, and in the Empress's service he might just stay that way. The game had changed. Riker Vale had entered the arena as a prisoner. He would leave it as something far more dangerous.